All right, so this is our talk today, Surf the Stream. We're going to be talking about Google Buzz, location, and social gaming. If that's what you're here for, you're in the right room. If that's not what you're here for, you're in the wrong room, which is sad because this is going to be really fun. If you'd like to take a look at the live notes being taken about this session on Wave, you can go to the following bit.ly link. It's bit.ly/buzzbingowave. Also, there's a moderator gadget on there, so you can start inputting questions there. Also, you'll be able to ask questions live on these microphones near the end of the session. The hashtag for this session is BuzzBingo. And there's a URL for the application we built for this session. It's buzz-bingo.appspot.com. Feel free to go there now and check it out, or you can check it out later. I'm Timothy Jordan. I'm a developer advocate working at Google.
And I'm Bob Aman. I'm a developer programs engineer, also at Google.
We're here today because one of our primary tasks is to work with the developer community, building on Google's platforms. And today we're going to be talking about the Google Buzz API. If you want to find us online, you can use our Buzzes or our Twitters, which are up there as well. All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about the conversational web and Google Buzz. Then we're going to go in and look at some apps and demos that have been built on the Buzz API or in process. We're going to look at something that Shared This has been working on. We're going to look at Boxy's integration with Buzz. And we're going to look at the game that we built for this session, Buzz Bingo. After which, we're going to talk a little bit about growing the Google Buzz ecosystem. And at the end, we're going to take some questions and hopefully provide some really excellent answers. All right, so first off, the conversational web. As you've probably heard from a lot of sessions here at Google I/O, from Chris Chabot, Chris Messina, Joseph Smar, John Panzer, and Will Norris, they've all been talking a lot about the conversational web and Google Buzz. And the conversational web is all about good internet conversations. And there's just a few required elements that we see in a nice conversational web apparatus. First is the ability to post messages to the internet and to be able to include rich media and links to other places on the internet in that post. The ability for people to respond to that post and mention their friends to bring them into the conversation. And this is what we consider the conversational web, this ability to have conversations online as if it were in real life. And our entry into this space is, in fact, Google Buzz. As you can see from this post by DeWitt Clinton, who linked to an article about the Droid Incredible. You may have heard of this phone. He posted about this article, and people joined that conversation. You'll see there's mentions in line in that conversation, and people are being brought into that conversation. People are linking to this. There's rich media. It's really a great way for people to connect online, and that's Google Buzz. All right, so people are building on top of this platform. Google Buzz is more than just the product that's embedded in Gmail. Now you're able to build applications that work with Google Buzz outside of Gmail. And Shared This has been working on something. They, if you know them, are a sharing network reaching 400 million consumers across 800,000 sites. Their core belief is simple sharing across channels and aggregated curation of what's being shared on the web. With the rise of social plugins, widgets of every type and flavor, it was important to the Share This developer team to create a social widget that aggregates top shared content and social comments from across Google Buzz and other networks and services. And that's what their Stream widget does. Share This expects the social Stream widget to be available to embed on publishers' sites in June, and they have a beta list open on their site now, so you can go and check it out and try and get involved. We're excited to see Share This building on this very cool widget, and can't wait to see what they'll come up with next. As you can see from the mocks here, it's a really interesting way to take conversations happening elsewhere on the internet and embed them in any site. Another application that I'd like to highlight is Boxy. Boxy's been working with us to help test the API, and yesterday they introduced some exciting new applications. Boxy users will be able to share what they're watching with friends on Google Buzz and to import their Buzz feed into Boxy, to watch video from their friends. And now you can see video recommendations from friends on Google, Buzz, Twitter, Facebook, and Boxy itself. As they say over at Boxy, it's like being able to channel surf through water cooler conversation from your couch. Let's take a quick look. On the Boxy home screen, you'll be able to see a list of items from Google Buzz in your feed on the left there. You click on one that looks interesting, and then it shows you the Buzz comment and links you to the video. You hit play, and you start watching that video right away, shared to you from Google Buzz. Once you've decided you want to share something, all you have to do is in the upper right-hand corner, hit that heart icon to share, enter custom text, or just tell your followers you love it and send them a link. We think this type of shared recommendation is going to be really cool, and you can check it out now on Boxy. All right, and this is the third demo that we wanted to show you today. This is what we built for this session, and it's called Buzz Bingo. Essentially, this game is Buzz Bingo as you've seen at conferences before. You know, you get a bingo board, and it's filled with keywords, and you mark them off, and you get a bingo. But in this case, you're playing Buzz Bingo through Google Buzz. So by joining conversations, you're marking off keywords on that board. So I'm just going to take you quickly through an overview here, and then we'll look at some screenshots, and we'll do a demo. So first off, you would sign in and auth for Buzz. It'll then generate a board for you. You join conversations. It'll mark the board with the keywords in those conversations that you've joined, and eventually you get bingo. So let's start with signing in and authing for Buzz. Pretty much you land on this page, buzz-bingo.appspot.com. You sign into the game, and for this, Cami Crape, our lovely test user, will be signing into the game. And we get brought to an authorization screen. It tells you, or any user, what this application will be allowed to do with your data. Hit OK, grant the access, and then you've authed for Buzz. The game will then generate a board for you, and you'll notice all the boards that it generates are with keywords from Google I/O sessions here today and yesterday. You then go out and join conversations on Buzz. So in this case, we see Tina Tamarind has mentioned that she's really excited to come see this session, and she mentions social web in her comment. Cami Craig then makes a comment on Tina's post, mentioning buzzbingo.io@gmail.com. And we've joined that conversation. The game will then find that mention, look for keywords, and mark it off on the Buzz Bingo board. And then eventually, you get 5 in a row, and there's a bingo. So it's a pretty simple concept, but we think it's a really fun game built on Buzz, and it uses the Buzz APIs built with App Engine. So let me do a quick demo here. Essentially, I'm just going to switch over to Cami's Buzz Bingo board here. As you can see, I've started a new game, and I have App Engine marked off. I'm going to go over to this other tab. It's a really interesting article about our new WebM video format, and I'm going to buzz about it. Can I include the link? Oh, I'll even put an image. How about that? And I'm going to mention buzzbingo.io@gmail.com. I'm going to post this Buzz. And it's simple as that. In a moment, I'll go back over to the board, and you'll see that HTML5 will be marked off on that. It's just as simple as that. Being able to join conversations on Buzz as part of a game is something that we found was really, really interesting. This idea of social gaming, but occurring in a conversational web format. All I have to do is make this post, and the App Engine game will go out on the internet and find that Buzz post using the Buzz API, find that keyword in that post, and mark it off on the board. Let me switch back over to the board here. And there we have it. HTML5 square has been marked off. Yay, the demo worked. All right, so let me switch back to the slides here. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Bob, who will go a little bit more in depth with how this works technically.
All right, so I'm going to be showing a lot of the code that we use to build this. It's all written in Python, and it runs on App Engine. This is the sort of the architecture diagram of how it's all set up. Your user is going to interact through the is my mic working? There we go. Through the Buzz UI. And they're also going to interact through the Buzz Bingo game on App Engine. And the game will also communicate with the Buzz API, which in turn also talks to Buzz. So I'm going to walk through the flow that we were talking about earlier, starting with signing in and authing for Buzz. So this is the code that you use to build your client and authorize it. So the first thing you have to do is set up your OAuth consumer. You have to obtain a OAuth consumer key in secret. You can do that from a page on the Accounts API. You have to register your domain, and it gives you the secret back. And you need to specify a scope. We're using a full access scope here, but there's also a read-only scope that you can use. So the first step after you have obtained after you've set up your consumer is to obtain the request token. The request token, you need to specify a callback, but otherwise that's the only parameter that you need. And then you generate an authorization URL using that request token. You do need to first save the request token to the data store, though. Then you redirect the user to the authorization URL that was built, and that looks like this. And when the user once they click through this page, they will be redirected back to the callback that you gave them, and that callback will have a parameter called the OAuth verifier. You look up the request token in the data store and pass that back to the client. And then you have your access token, which you fetch from the Accounts API using the verifier that it gave you in the callback. And then you've upgraded your request token to an access token, and you can save that to the data store. And now you have full access to the API. Once you have access to the API, we proceed to generate the board. The way that we do that is actually pretty simple. We have a predefined topic list, which we've stored in a constant. We just choose 24 of the topics at random, just iterating through the list, picking one of the 24 or one of the topics until we finally have a list containing 24 items. And then we go and we actually generate the scores in the board. We don't care about the free space in the center. There's no topic for that. So if X and Y are 2, we skip over it. And we commit the square to the data store. And we name the key based on the X and Y location so that it is fast to do the lookup for it. And we give each square the topic that's associated with it. And then for the convenience of accessing it, we then insert it into a two-dimensional array inside our player data structure. So then the user goes out and they join conversations. And while they're out joining conversations, the App Engine game is polling the consumption feed for the buzzbingo.io@gmail.com user. And so it tries to mark off your board as these tasks are run. So the first thing that happens when we go to scan a new post is we take the comment text and the post text, and we search through our predefined list of topics, and we pull out all of the the keywords that appear in that topic list, and we save that in the topics found array. And then we take the list of topics that the player actually has that appear on their board, and we calculate the intersection between the two, because you're only going to score topics that are on your board and appeared in the comment that we care about. And we're actually scoring multiple players at the same time, so that's why we have to do this intersection here. And then we pick one of the topics at random from the intersection and score the post on that topic. And you can when you go to score a post, you can only do that once per player, and it enforces that. So when you go to score the player, score the post, it then goes and tries to award badges. And we have a whole bunch of conditions that we check to figure out which badge we should award at any given time. So for example, with the share and share alike badge that Timothy demonstrated earlier when he shared an article, we check the post for attachments. And if we find an attachment of type article, then we award the player the share badge. If we have a geocode on the post and the author of the post wasn't the player, then we know that they've joined a conversation with geocode metadata on it, and we award them the geo badge. But if, on the other hand, it was the player, then we award them the mobile badge for posting a relevant comment from their mobile phone. And when we give out a badge, we want to send a message to the player, telling them, hey, we've sent you, or we've awarded you a badge. So we start to assemble a message that we transmit back to the Buzz API. And so the first thing we do is we create a badge attachment containing the icon of the badge we're awarding. And we assign that a type of photo. But we also want to advertise the game, so we attach a link attachment to the game itself so that you can easily navigate back to the game. And we assign that a type of article, a title, and the appropriate URI. And then we go to actually construct the post itself. We give it some post content. We give it the two attachments that we assembled just prior. And we decided that we wanted to geocode all of the posts to Moscone. So we have a venue geocode and place ID that we attach to the post as well. And then finally, we just simply call client.createPost with the post data structure that we've built. And then finally, when we want to go determine that you've made a bingo, we use this algorithm. It's pretty simple. We have initialized two arrays, which basically are the counts of all of the marked posts in each row and column. And then we just iterate over the board and increment each of those counters. And if any of the counters reach 5, then you've achieved a bingo. And the interesting thing that we did here to make it really simple is we have the two 1s in the center there, and that's just for the free space. And then we award you the bingo badge if you have 5 of them. And in order to keep track of the leaderboard, we also increment a bingo count so that you can see who has the most bingos in the game so far. The source code for Buzz Bingo is open source. So if you want to take a look at what we've done, you can go to that URL and take a look around. There's some really interesting stuff in there. I sort of glossed over a lot because it's just way out of scope, but it goes into a lot of depth in the source. And you can play around with that. You can run it on your own App Engine instance if you like. The Google Buzz API is live now. The documentation is here. And I'm
I'm going to turn it back over to Timothy.
All right, so one of the reasons Bob and I wanted to do this is that we thought it would be fun to write something that was innovative, something that you wouldn't expect to be built on the Buzz platform. Yeah? You wouldn't necessarily expect to be playing a social game on a conversational web product, but I think we've demonstrated that not only can you build it, but it's actually kind of cool. And I hope that you do all have a chance to go out to buzz-bingo.appspot.com and play with this, and also to take a look at the open source project to see how it's built. At Google, it's important for us to make it easy for people to build on top of our products. And even more importantly, to use open standards to do that. In the Buzz API, we're using activity streams, we're using OAuth, we're using pub/sub/hubbub, and we're using Salmon. And these are open protocols, they're open standards that are being used across the web today. And they're also what the Buzz API is built upon. That makes it easy for something like this. This is the topology of the game as it is today. But this is what it actually looks a little bit more like, yeah? With the activity streams and Salmon and OAuth and pub/sub/hubbub being the glue, being what holds the Buzz API together. It can then become something more like this, yeah? Is that although this game was built with Buzz in mind, with, by the user interacting with the App Engine app or interacting with the Buzz product itself, one day we're hoping that a product like this could also be built for Buzz, it could be built for ClickSet, it could be built for Blogger, it could be built for StatusNet, because they're all using the same protocols. Yeah? We feel pretty strongly that these protocols are a really great choice, and we're excited that the API is built upon them. And with that, I'm hoping that before we get to answers and questions, that you're all feeling pretty inspired to go out there and build your own products on the Buzz API. We've got some really great resources out there to help you. There are the docs on the code site, which I believe is code.google.com/apis/buzz/docs. And from there, you can also find the developer forum that's really, really useful. So I'd like to open it up for questions and answers. You can go to the Wave, bit.ly/BuzzBingoWave, and type in your questions in the moderator there, or you can step up to one of these microphones in the center of the room and ask your question live.
So this is just a general question about Buzz. It seems like it has a lot of similar feature sets to Wave. And when I first saw it pop up, I thought, oh, they must have implemented Wave in Gmail now, and they're calling it Buzz. So why are they two separate products?
You know, that's a question that I've heard a couple times. And I can tell you my personal opinion on the differences between Wave and Buzz. I typically use Wave as a living document product. If I want to have a conversation with somebody, I want that to last a long time, and I'd like to eventually have that become kind of a document, that's a great use case for Wave. Whereas Buzz is more like your daily conversations or idea sharing. And I think the feature sets involved in both products really sort of support those two different use cases.
All right.
All right, I'm going to turn to the moderator, Gadget, unless anybody else wants to step to a microphone. It's lots of fun. Ooh, we got another live question.
Kind of piggybacking off of that last question, are we going to see more real time in that conversational daily, that daily conversational activity stream that Buzz is? Well, using some elements from Wave.
I'm not sure if I understand the question correctly. You're asking, is there going to be more real-time interaction on Buzz?
Well, yeah. One of the features we see with Wave is you know, active in context conversations, right? So you can see the cursor, for example, moving. That's not Wave. That's not Buzz. in a way? Is that done purposefully, or is there going to be more of this live in-context conversations within Buzz?
Well, I know in the Buzz product today, if you were commenting on a post and somebody else were to comment on a post, that would show up in real time in the page. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about? Yeah, so I think some of those features are already built in. But I mean, it's
Yeah,
this product
we support Hubs Up Hubbub. Is already built in, and that's actually already live and works.
Are you familiar with Hubs Up Hubbub?
Okay. Yep.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
no,
it
that's
works.
totally in there, and it works swimmingly. Let's see if there are questions up here. Will any plan to integrate? So this first question, is there any plan to integrate Google-linked Buzz services such as Reader, so that when sharing an item in Reader, the users who both get the Buzz and subscribe to the Reader feed only get the Buzz, or read it in Reader only and not see it in Buzz? So this seems like a deduplication across multiple services question.
We are exposing IDs that we can use to dedupe, and we already have a lot of code in there for doing deduping. But I honestly didn't quite understand the question. That would be awesome. Please clarify.
You're basically right on the money. It's a duplication, right? So I have my friend over there. He gets both my Reader feed and Buzz from me.
Mm-hmm.
He sees it in both. We go into Reader. We have to mark it as read in Reader as well as seeing it
Okay,
in
I
Buzz.
see.
And basically, it seems like kind of backwards from sharing. We want to mark it as read in Reader automatically if he saw it in Buzz and vice versa.
Okay, so we are planning on supporting the Atom cross-posting extension, and we're basically going to, anytime a feed comes into Buzz, the ID of that feed will then get exposed on the way back out in the Atom cross-posting extension, so that any other services that are consuming those feeds and looking at them can do intelligent things with that. And so it should be perfectly possible to do that, yeah.
Thanks.
All right, so the next question here, how does a user is supposed to interact with both Buzz and Wave together? I just see Wave as an improved Buzz. I think that's sort of similar to the question before,
Yeah,
right?
the previous question.
I mean, I think there are really two different products with two different use cases. Will Android users anytime soon be able to upload captured videos to their Buzz? I don't know, but that sounds really cool.
It certainly does.
Right now, you can upload to YouTube, and you can share YouTube videos directly into Buzz by linking to them.
Yep.
And that works very, very well.
Yeah, and you can also do that through the API with the client library that I showed.
Are there any plans to, oh, that's the same one. Let's see here. Are there any plans to link Google Buzz with Facebook, as has already been done with Twitter and YouTube? I have no idea.
It's a good question. Perhaps address it to press@google.com.
Yeah, they would be good ones to ask. The integration of Buzz into Latitude has been very successful. Are there any plans to introduce a check-in feature? I think that's a really cool idea. I don't know if we've done anything along those lines or not, but I'll mention it to the team. Do we have any other questions live from the audience in studio? No questions. Do we have anything else to say about the API? We got a few minutes left.
We have 3 client libraries available. All of them make it really easy to develop against the Buzz API.
We have a Python one.
Python,
a
PHP, and Java.
And then I'm also going to be working on an ActionScript one that should come out in a few weeks or so.
And there's a C# library in progress as well.
So if writing the code from scratch isn't your thing, there are libraries available that makes this quite a bit easier.
Yeah.
In fact, for the App Engine game, Bob used the Python
Yep.
library to do it,
Yep.
which I understand made it lots easier.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just bring up some of those code pages. All right, so this is the documentation, and it's written very well. I think you guys will really enjoy it. So I encourage you to visit this website. Oh,
Yeah, would help if it was on the right screen.
there we are. I encourage you to visit this website and check out the API online. Look at this documentation. Take a look at the libraries available for working with the Buzz API, and think up something really cool to do, and go for it. And if you have any trouble, get in touch. We'd love to help. And with that, I think we're good. If you'd like to come up and ask us any more questions off mic, you're more than welcome to.
Thank you.